We really appreciate you sending this material over. It's something so many people grapple with.
Absolutely.
And this piece from Simply Psychology, How to Feel Better After a Breakup. It's by Anna Drescher, reviewed by Dr. Saul McLeod and Olivia Guy Evans, published last fall. Seems really thorough.
It is. It really digs into both why breakups hurt so much, which is important, and then crucially, what you can actually do to heal.
Right. So our mission here is basically to pull out the most vital stuff from this article, make it actionable, help folks feel informed, maybe a bit empowered, without getting overwhelmed by all the info.
Well, exactly. We want to nail down the key insights, the practical strategies, give you the tools, essentially.
Okay, let's dive in then. The article kind of splits into two main chunks, right? First, understanding the pain, and second, the healing strategies.
That's the structure. And starting with why it hurts. That makes sense. You need to understand the what before you get to the how.
So why do breakups hurt so intensely? What's the core reason?
Well, the article really hammers home that it's fundamentally about loss. A massive loss.
Loss of the person, obviously, but it's more than that.
Oh, definitely. Think about it. Romantic relationships, they become these central pillars. They give life meaning, structure, shared goals, dreams. When that ends, it's not just that person who's gone. It's like a whole chunk of your life's narrative just vanishes.
Yeah, the article breaks that down well. It talks about losing the future you pictured, the shared history,
Yeah.
even bits of your own identity that got tied up in being part of that couple.
Exactly. And the stability, the support, it's a multi-layered
A
loss.
real domino effect.
Precisely. And the grief that comes with that is huge. The article mentions grieving lost experiences, routines, those future plans you were actively building. It's not just surface-level sadness. It taps into really deep human needs, connection, security, who you even are. It can feel incredibly destabilizing, disorienting.
It uses this powerful description, like grieving someone who ceased to exist, even though they're still out there. That really captures the emptiness, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, because the version of them that was yours, the shared world you had, that has ceased to exist.
Okay, so profound loss is a big piece. What else contributes to the pain?
Well, alongside the loss, there's the sheer upheaval. The article talks about change and uncertainty.
Right. Suddenly everything's different. Routines are shot.
Totally. And there can be big practical things too. Maybe you have to move, split up finances, divide belongings. The future suddenly goes from feeling somewhat mapped out to being this huge question mark.
Which, as the article points out, flies right in the face of our need for stability. Humans don't generally love massive, sudden uncertainty.
Not typically, no. It can feel incredibly overwhelming when your foundation feels like it's just gone.
And then there's the emotional side. The article calls it an emotional roller coaster.
That's a perfect description, isn't it? You can feel intense sadness one minute, maybe anger the next, confusion, even, weirdly, relief sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Guilt, loneliness, hope, optimism, maybe all in one afternoon.
Exactly. It's this wild swing. And the article notes that if the breakup was sudden or involved something like betrayal or ghosting, well, that can be particularly traumatic. It just amplifies everything.
Makes sense. It lists some common emotional experiences, which is helpful, I think. Sadness, grief, anger, resentment.
Isolation, loneliness, confusion, denial, self-doubt, that unease.
Even guilt or maybe relief and a sense of freedom, hope. It's validating to see them listed, like, okay, this chaos of feelings is actually normal.
It's incredibly normal, and it's not just the feelings themselves, but also how our thoughts can spiral. The article dives into negative thought patterns.
Right. The impact on self-esteem, that can be brutal.
Yeah, it links it to primal fears, like abandonment, feeling worthless. Rejection from someone you were that close to can really poke at those deep insecurities.
And all your own perceived flaws suddenly feel magnified, right? Start picking yourself apart.
Totally. The article mentions things like catastrophic thinking, assuming the worst. Or self-blame, taking all the responsibility.
Or maybe blaming the ex for everything, regret, just constantly replaying things. That rumination.
That rumination cycle can be so hard to break, just going over and over. What if only? It's exhausting.
Definitely. And there's one more layer the article adds, dealing with your ex's reaction.
Yes. That can really complicate things, because how they handle it adds another emotional burden for you.
Whether they're dismissive, angry, upset, indifferent, or even, as the article puts it, like happy about it.
Right. Each of those reactions brings its own challenge and just adds to the difficulty you're already navigating.
Okay, so deep loss, massive change, emotional chaos, negative thoughts, plus the ex's reaction. It paints a clear picture of why this is a tough, tough
It
experience.
really does. It's multifaceted.
So the million-dollar question then, how do you start to heal? Where does the article point us?
Crucially, it emphasizes that healing takes time and patience. There's no quick fix.
Right? No magic wand.
No, but it's not just passive waiting. Healing needs positive action, consciously taking steps to support yourself.
And it's different for everyone, right? What works depends on the situation, your personality.
Exactly. But the article pulls together some common threads, things that generally seem to help based on expert insights and shared experiences.
Okay, what's step one?
One of the first and often hardest steps is limiting, or ideally, eliminating contact with the ex. A clean break.
So no calls, texts, emails, and definitely no social media deep dives.
Definitely not. The article is quite firm on that. Avoid the stalking. Block them if you need to for your own peace of mind. It sounds harsh, maybe, but it's often necessary.
There's a quote in there, isn't there? Something about how staying in contact just drains you.
Yeah, if you don't, it will drain you. You need time for yourself. It just keeps reopening the wound, preventing that forward movement.
What about situations like co-parenting? You can't always go full no contact.
True. The article acknowledges exceptions like co-parenting. But even then, the emphasis is strongly on setting very clear boundaries. What communication is essential? What's off limits? How do you handle accidental run-ins?
And it's not just direct contact. It mentions talking to mutual friends, too.
Yes. Setting boundaries there is key. Asking friends explicitly, hey, please don't give me updates on my ex. That helps protect your healing space.
Good point. Okay, so limit contact. What's next?
Allow yourself to grieve fully. Don't bottle it up.
Let the tears flow, as someone in the article said.
Exactly. It's framing that sadness, that pain, not as weakness, but as a necessary, natural response to loss.
Like that Robert Frost quote, the only way out is through. You have to
Mhm.
feel it to move past it.
Precisely. That initial flood of emotion, the article presents it as healthy, necessary even. Allowing it helps you process and eventually move through it.
Makes sense. What else helps?
Leaning on your support system. Friends, family, talk to them. Ask for help.
Don't isolate yourself, basically,
Yeah.
even if you feel like hiding.
Right. Resist that urge. Connection is vital. The article even shares a little story about someone realizing they'd neglected friendships during the relationship.
Ah, yeah, I remember that. They reached out and were surprised by the support.
Exactly. It was a reminder of how many people cared. Nurturing those other relationships is so important. They offer perspective, support, a lifeline.
Okay, so lean on support. The next point is about acceptance and self-compassion. Acceptance sounds hard.
It often is. Truly accepting the relationship is over, letting go of reconciliation hopes. Someone in the article called it the single hardest part.
That constant what-if game.
Yeah. But facing that reality, painful as it is crucial for moving on. Like the quote says, they're not coming back, life is not a movie. It's blunt, but necessary.
And the self-compassion part. Being kind to yourself.
Super important. The article suggests practical things. Talk to yourself like you'd talk to a hurting friend. Write yourself a kind letter. Even simple things like soothing touch when you're upset.
So shifting that inner critic to more of an inner ally.
Exactly. Recognizing you're in pain and offering yourself kindness the same way you would for someone else you care about.
Okay. The article also mentions emotion regulation techniques. What are those about?
These are basically tools to help you ground yourself when emotions feel overwhelming. It's not about not feeling, but about managing the intensity.
Finding a balance.
Yeah, a balance between feeling the emotions and calming your nervous system so you don't get completely swept away.
What kind of techniques?
Things like mindfulness, meditation, even short ones focusing on gratitude, simple breathing exercises, they help bring you back to center.
And basic self-care is in there too, right?
Yeah.
Seems obvious, but maybe easy to neglect.
Absolutely crucial. The article stresses how exhausting heartbreak is. So being kind to yourself through basic care is non-negotiable.
Like getting enough sleep, eating well.
Yep. Spending time in nature, exercise for those endorphins, connecting with people, rest, relaxation, reading, writing, just nurturing yourself, mind, body, spirit.
Now, this next one is interesting. Rituals for breakups.
Yeah, that's a fascinating concept. It draws on Esther Perel's ideas. The thinking is that rituals can help you internalize the ending, mark it symbolically, while also affirming you as an individual moving forward.
Like what kind of rituals?
The article gives examples. Physically removing the excess stuff, a tangible ending. Writing breakup letters, not to send, but purely to process your feelings, gain clarity.
Visiting significant places to say goodbye to that chapter. Journaling.
Exactly. It's about honoring the past but consciously letting go. And importantly, these are for your emotional processing and not punishment. They need self-compassion.
Makes sense. Then there's embracing being single, which can be scary for some people.
Definitely. The fear of being alone is real. The article suggests learning to enjoy your own company again, shifting focus back to yourself.
Planning dates with yourself.
Yeah, it sounds a bit cheesy maybe, but it's about reinforcing self-worth, rediscovering your own interests.
And it warns against rushing into something new just to avoid the pain.
Right. Or using casual encounters as a distraction. The advice is to pause, check your motivation. Is this genuine desire or just escape?
Good question to ask yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, what about distractions? Are they okay?
Healthy distractions, yes. The article clarifies, not to avoid pain permanently, but to give your brain a break from the negative loops.
Like learning something new, a hobby, travel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Learning a skill, revisiting old hobbies, travel, creative expression, positive ways to redirect energy temporarily.
And a big don't seems to be social media, especially checking the ex's profile.
Oh, huge don't. It just hinders moving on. Triggers memories, fuels comparison, jealousy, all that negative stuff.
The anecdote about seeing the ex looking happy online, it's so relatable and awful.
Totally. So block, detox, switch off. Focus on yourself, not their curated online life.
Which leads into reflection, right? The internal work.
Yes. Journaling helps get thoughts out. Writing that unsent letter to the ex can process feelings.
And not just focusing on what the ex did wrong, but looking at your role, lessons learned.
Crucial. The article poses great reflective questions. Who were you in that relationship? What could you do differently next time? What do you really want? What patterns do you see? What are your needs, boundaries?
That feels really productive for growth, not just getting over this breakup.
Absolutely. It's about building healthier future connections too, which ties into rebuilding your self-concept and envisioning the future.
Seeing as an opportunity.
Yes, a chance to reclaim parts of yourself, rediscover passions, define what you want now. There's that Daphne Rose Kingma quote, "Holding on is believing that there's a past. Letting go is knowing that there's a future."
Powerful. Forgiveness is also mentioned. Forgiving them, forgiving yourself.
Yeah, that can be incredibly freeing. Letting go of resentment, anger, guilt. It creates space for peace. The anecdote about forgiving both, recognizing incompatibility, is insightful.
Then there's cognitive reappraisal, changing how you think about it.
Sort of.
Mhm.
It's about consciously shifting your perspective, maybe focusing on negative aspects of the relationship to help accept the breakup.
Reframing it as redirection, an opportunity, highlighting the benefits of being single.
Exactly. Tools for tough moments, as the article says. Not a magic bullet, but helpful ways to reframe thoughts.
And if you're really struggling, therapy is suggested.
Definitely. Professional help can be invaluable. Plus, inspiring podcasts, books, supplementary support.
The article also touches on attachment styles. How does that play in?
It explains how your attachment style influences coping. Securely attached folks tend to manage better. Working on insecurities helps not just with this breakup, but future relationships too.
Insecure attachment might mean more distress, maybe less self-soothing ability.
Generally, yes. The article lists healthy coping mechanisms of secure folks. Emotion regulation, using social support, positive reframing, problem solving, self-compassion, things worth cultivating.
And a specific note on toxic relationships.
Yes, very important. Leaving those has unique challenges, potential dangers even. Healing is often harder because reality itself might have been distorted by the abuser. Prioritizing safety and sanity is paramount. Small progress signs are huge there.
Okay, so lots of do's. The article also lists some don'ts, right? Things to avoid.
Yeah, it wraps up with common pitfalls. Acknowledges self-destructive urges are normal in tough times, but encourages finding solutions.
Like avoiding the social media stalking we mentioned.
Right. Seeking closure by constantly contacting the ex usually doesn't work. Rushing into a new relationship. Comparing yourself to others.
Using substances or unhealthy behaviors to numb out. Isolating yourself.
Exactly. All those things tend to hinder healing and just prolong the pain.
Wow, okay. So, bringing it all together. The big takeaway seems to be that healing is definitely a journey. It needs time, kindness to yourself, and actively using these healthy strategies.
That's the core message. It's a process, requires patience, self-compassion, and positive action, drawing on these kinds of insights.
And these are all drawn directly from that Simply Psychology article you shared, giving folks a really solid roadmap.
Hopefully, yeah. A curated guide through a really tough experience.
Yeah. So maybe a final thought for listeners. As you navigate your own path, Perhaps reflect on which of these strategies really clicks for you right now, maybe exploring self-compassion more deeply, or looking into attachment styles. Could that be a useful next step?
That's a great takeaway. Considering what resonates most personally and maybe digging a bit deeper into concepts like self compassion or attachment could definitely be a valuable part of the ongoing healing and growth journey.